The still, blue waters of Cedar Lake had always been my sanctuary. My grandfather had purchased the 7-acre plot of dense pine forest and untouched shoreline back in 1953, a time when the concept of a Holloway Oaks Homeowners Association was a laughable fantasy. The lake was the crown jewel, and our property held 350 feet of its precious, pebbled beach. I grew up skipping stones on its surface, learning to swim in its chilly depths, and dreaming under the constellations reflected upon its glassy plain at night. When he passed, the land and the lakefront came to me, Leo, his somewhat reclusive, workshop-haunting grandson. I was a carpenter and fabricator by trade, a creator of tangible, useful things in a world increasingly made of pixels and paperwork. My inheritance wasn't just land, it was a promise of peace, of autonomy, of a life anchored to something real and elemental. I moved into the modest cabin my granddad had built, vowing to be a good steward. Little did I know that my stewardship would soon become a siege, and the lake itself would become the battleground in a war of petty tyranny, with a woman named Karen as its self-appointed general. The enemy territory lay just beyond my tree line, Holloway Oaks. A sprawling subdivision of McMansions with vinyl siding masquerading as cedar shake, manicured lawns that smelled of chemical fertilizer, and 3-car garages housing SUVs that never saw a dirt road. Their world was governed by covenants, restrictions, and the iron fist of the HOA board. And at the helm of that board, as chairperson, was Karen. Karen wasn't just a name, it was a title, a state of being. She had the perfectly highlighted blonde bob that never moved in the wind, the uniform of athleisure where even at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, and eyes that could spot a trash can lid left ajar or a mailbox slightly off regulation bronze from 50 paces. Her smile was a tactical weapon, deployed to disarm before the strike. She believed, with a zealot's conviction, that uniformity was beauty, control was order, and my wild, unsubdivided patch of paradise was a festering thorn in the side of Holloway Oaks' pristine image. The skirmishes began innocuously enough. A letter, on crisp HOA letterhead, politely informing me that the unapproved foliage on my border was encroaching on the sightlines of Holloway Oaks properties and constituted a potential fire hazard. The foliage was a magnificent, century-old oak. I ignored it. Then came the notice about my non-conforming driveway surface, gravel, and the unauthorized storage structure, my grandfather's vintage, but perfectly maintained, toolshed. Each missive was signed with a florid, aggressive signature, Karen P. Whitlock, board chair. The first direct confrontation happened at the Holloway Oaks annual Community Mixer, an event I attended only because my one friend in the subdivision, a weary-eyed software engineer named Ben, begged me for moral support. I stood near the punch bowl, a stranger in my own flannel, when I felt a presence. Leo, isn't it? Her voice was like chilled honey. We haven't officially met. I'm Karen Whitlock. Leo, I said, shaking her offered hand, which was surprisingly strong. We're so delighted to have you as a neighbor, she lied smoothly. We just want to ensure Holloway Oaks maintains its character and, most importantly, its property values. Your little homestead is quite unique. That lakefront is particularly lovely. Thank you. It's been in my family a long time. Yes, she said, her eyes narrowing a fraction. Such a large water feature for just one person. It must be a burden to maintain. I couldn't help but notice there's no proper dock. Just that old, rotting wooden thing. It's not rotting. It's seasoned. And it's all I need. Well, aesthetics matter, Leo. An unkempt shoreline affects everyone's view. The board has discussed it. A unified, community lakeshore would be such an asset. Perhaps we could discuss an easement? For the good of the neighborhood. The audacity took my breath away. The lake is private property, Karen. My property. There's no discussion to be had. The chilled honey turned to vinegar. Everything is open to discussion, Leo. Community is about compromise. Think about it. She pivoted and melted back into the crowd, leaving me with a cold dread pooling in my stomach. The war was declared. Her campaign intensified. Code enforcement visits, always unfounded, anonymous complaints about noise, the sound of my handsaw, and a petition circulated among newer residents claiming my neglect of the lakefront was attracting geese and lowering their home values. The final straw was a formal, legal-looking document proposing a shared maintenance agreement for the lake, which was essentially a thinly veiled land grab, citing obscure riparian rights arguments their lawyer had cobbled together. That was the moment my quiet determination hardened into cold, creative fury. They wanted a dock? I'd give them a dock. But not their dock. My dock. I spent weeks in my workshop, not building a simple pier, but engineering a masterpiece. I used sustainably harvested black locust posts, impervious to water. The decking was rich, warm ipe wood. I built a sturdy, wide platform at the end, with built-in benches and solar-powered, soft-glow lanterns. It was elegant, robust, and unquestionably permitted on my own land. But the piece de resistance was the access. The only logical path from the Holloway Oaks side to the lake was a narrow strip between two properties, a strip I now discovered, after a feverish night surveying old plats at the county recorder's office, was also part of my grandfather's original purchase, a forgotten 15-foot wide easement to the main road that had never been seeded. It was a landlocked alley of pines, rightfully mine. As I built, Karen panicked. I could see her sometimes, a blonde speck at the edge of the subdivision's communal viewing area, a pathetic little bench they'd installed staring at my lake. She'd be on her phone, gesticulating. The letters now came daily, cease and desist orders for unpermitted construction, threats of liens, accusations of destruction of shared environmental resources. My lawyer, a gruff old badger named Mr. Henderson, would chuckle and file them away. She's bluffing, son. Your deeds are cleaner than a preacher's conscience. She's just mad she can't control it. The dock was completed on a glorious Saturday morning. I launched my old rowboat from it, the sound of the water lapping against the pristine wood a symphony of victory. From the shore, I saw Karen. She wasn't alone. She had a small contingent of her board members. They were pointing, their faces pinched with outrage. I gave a cheerful wave. Karen looked like she'd swallowed a bee. The HOA's retaliation was swift and petty. They erected a tall, ugly fence along the edge of their property, blocking their own view of the lake in a spiteful attempt to preserve privacy. They officially forbade any resident from trespassing on the lake via my property. They tried to get the county to classify my dock as a nuisance structure, which failed. They even organized a lake awareness picnic on their side of the fence, which looked utterly ridiculous, a bunch of people in lawn chairs, eating potato salad, and staring at a vinyl fence. But summer came, and with it, a heat wave. The Holloway Oaks community pool became a tepid, chlorinated soup, overcrowded with shrieking children. My lake, meanwhile, was a cool, sparkling oasis. I'd be out on my dock, fishing or reading, in a state of blissful solitude. The fence, I noticed, had a few new knots holes at eye level. The cracks in Karen's empire began to show. First, it was Ben. He knocked on my cabin door one evening, looking sheepish. "Leo, look, my kids are melting. Any chance, just for a quick swim? We'd be invisible, I swear." I looked at his pleading face. "Meet me at the Pine Alley at 7 p.m. Don't tell a soul." That first clandestine swim was a revelation. The joy on his kids' faces, the genuine thanks in Ben's eyes. Word, of course, leaked. Not from Ben, but from the sheer, radiant happiness of his children who couldn't stop talking about the secret lake. Next came the Millers, an elderly couple who found the pool too taxing. Then the Patel family, who found the HOA pool rules oppressive. I began hosting by invitation only evening swims. It was a quiet rebellion. Karen knew. She had to know. The drop in pool attendance, the whispered conversations that stopped when she approached. Her panic evolved into a silent, seething fury. She doubled down, sending a hysterical email blast about the dangers of unsupervised waterways and liability nightmares. Then, the incident that broke the dam. Karen's own vice chair, a man named Richard, who had always been her staunchest ally, approached me. He was sweating, not from the heat, but from anxiety. "Leo," he mumbled. "My daughter is having her 16th birthday party. She doesn't want the pool. She wants the lake. She's seen it from gaps. Karen would crucify me. But, what would it take?" I looked at him, this man who had signed every nasty letter. A plan, fully formed and deliciously perfect, clicked into place in my mind. "It would take a formal agreement," I said calmly. "A lease for access. Paid to me, monthly. And it wouldn't be for you. It would be for the HOA." Richard blanched. "The HOA? Pay you?" "The HOA wants access to a community amenity," I said, my carpenter's mind laying out the logic like a clean joint. "I have that amenity. I am willing to license limited, controlled access for a fee. It covers my maintenance, insurance, and let's be honest, the sheer annoyance factor. Take it to the board." To Karen. The emergency board meeting was legendary, as Ben later recounted to me. Karen reportedly exploded. "Pay him? That hermit. That's scofflaw. We'll sue him into the ground. But Richard, with the desperate courage of a father promised a happy teenage daughter, stood his ground. Others joined. The quiet majority, tired of Karen's dictatorship and the pathetic pool, saw a chance. The vote was called. Karen was outvoted. The motion to enter into negotiations with me for lake access passed. She reportedly resigned on the spot, but her resignation was immediately tabled for later discussion by the newly emboldened board. She was stripped of power in everything but name. Mr. Henderson and I drew up the terms. It was a thing of beauty. The Holloway Oaks HOA would pay me a monthly sum, significant enough to be a solid income stream for me, but less than the cost of a country club membership for each household. In return, I would provide keyed access to the Pine Alley Gate informal, scheduled access to the dock for HOA members between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., with reservations. I retained full ownership, all rights, and exclusive use outside those hours. I was to be referred to as the lake steward, not a tenant or partner. There were liability waivers, codes of conduct, no loud music, no littering, catch and release fishing only, and a clause that allowed me to revoke the HOA's access if terms were breached. The day they signed, Karen was forced to attend as the outgoing chair. Her signature was a jagged, violent scribble. She wouldn't look at me. The look on her face wasn't just anger, it was the utter collapse of a worldview. She had panicked over a private lake, tried to bully and seize it, and in doing so, had engineered a situation where her precious HOA now paid tribute to the very man she sought to crush. The transformation was surreal. The ugly fence came down. In its place, a tasteful, low-stone marker was installed where my property began, reading Cedar Lake Access, by agreement with the steward. The HOA newsletter, once a vehicle for Karen's decrees, now featured a calendar for lake slots and reminders to respect the serenity of the steward's domain. Families now enjoyed the lake respectfully. Children learned to fish. Couples paddled in canoes they rented through a system I set up. The once toxic atmosphere of Holloway Oaks softened. Without Karen's constant nitpicking, people actually started to like each other. A new, saner board was elected. Ben joined it. Karen became a ghost. She still lived in her perfect house, but she rarely emerged. When she did, she would walk her perfectly groomed Bichon Frise on the far side of the neighborhood, away from the laughter that now often drifted from the direction of the lake. Her panicked campaign had backfired so completely it had become neighborhood legend. My dock, the symbol of her defeat, was now the community's most prized feature. I still have my mornings and evenings on the lake, times reserved solely for me. Sitting on the dock I built, listening to the loons call as the sun sets, I feel a deep, satisfying peace. The water is still my sanctuary, but now it's also my victory lap. Karen's panic sought to confine and control the beautiful, wild thing she couldn't understand. In her futile effort, she only succeeded in proving its value and in writing a check to acknowledge it every single month. The last I heard, she was trying to rally support for a new cause, banning the use of certain lawn fertilizers that might leach into the watershed. Some habits, it seems, die hard. But now, when she speaks, people just nod politely and then check their calendars to see if they've secured a Saturday afternoon slot on Leo's dock. The lake, once a source of conflict, now flows with a gentle, profitable, and deeply ironic peace.